So, welcome to Hopeful Conversations. I'm Vicky Montague and I'm joined by Kate Seren today. And Kate is someone that I've literally only just met in the last few months. And Kate and I are doing an holistic health course together online. And she heard that I was doing these podcasts and conversations and felt that it would be helpful for others to share her story. So I'm not going to say very much because I don't know very much, and I'm as interested as you, the listener, is in what Kate is going to share with us. And I think it's going to be a really valuable, hopefully a valuable conversation for people. So Kate, do you want to just kind of introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about the health challenges that you've had and kind of where you are with it all now?
Yeah, certainly. So my journey has been a lifelong journey with quite severe mental illness. And when I say quite severe, we're talking psychosis, hallucinating, not knowing what was real, being suicidal, suicide ideation, and all the things that go alongside in the background, depression, anxiety.
Yeah.
So it's been quite intense. It's been all of my life, really, that I can remember. My first really big psychotic episode, if you want to call it that, was at 11.
Wow.
So big part of my life, come in and out of focus over my life. It isn't like a constant thing, but a few years off and then back into it. So to the point where in 2010 I was I don't think the right word is registered disabled, but I was on disability living allowance.
Right.
My partner was my carer.
Yeah.
I was seen as never being able to work again. I was housebound. I couldn't go out the house. I don't know what it is in kilograms, but I was 21 stone. I was couldn't get out of the chair. So
for anyone listening and you can't see Kate, that's significantly larger than you are now.
yeah, I lost 9 stone after.
Wow.
So it was just so take it back to December 2014. I was housebound. I couldn't get out of a chair. I was on disability living allowance. My partner was my full-time carer. And I was on 3 or 4 different types of medication. And that was it. That was my life and had been my life for that severely for about 5 years.
Wow.
And now, well, since 2015, I'm on no medication. Lost 9 stone. Can walk 5 miles without thinking about it. Go on courses. So yeah, just like it. And to me now, rather than up until that point, I'd always been afraid I would be ill again. I'm not at all now.
How interesting.
Mm.
So what was the turning point in what kind of happened, I guess? So you talked about having had this mental health issues for a very long time in your life, which presumably kind of had they got to the worst point in 2010?
Yeah.
You would say.
Yeah. So it was leading up to becoming, I mean, they were pretty bad at other times, but this was a time that I actually committed in my mind to doing whatever the I want to say NHS, but like it's not a generalized. I was going to follow the protocol because I'd been in and out of it for so long.
Yeah.
And I'd like had meds and like had psychiatrists, and they're just like, no, go. Like, no, I'm okay, I'll go. And because it had kept coming back and getting worse and worse, I thought, no, this time I'm committing to follow whatever treatment through, whatever they give me. So it was actually more than 5 years, because when it started before then, my sort of commitment to it. And what happened was they kept just increasing my medication, giving me more and more medication.
Right.
So I was on antidepressants, antipsychotics, tranquilizers, and sleeping tablets.
Wow.
which in effect you can see why I couldn't move.
Yeah, I was going to say, no wonder you were housebound and had that much weight, because I presume you didn't do anything.
Yeah, I was comatose. And the other thing that those meds did to me, which is possibly the worst part, is that they erased some of my memory. So my memory of that time, I look back and it's just a black hole. I can't see anything. I see a photo of my daughter, she was 12. I didn't know her when she was 12. You know, if I look at my son at 16, yeah, so there's this 5 to 6 year gap where my memory's erased. So that's kind of, for me, that's the worst thing. Yeah. Everything else is okay, because it's just what had to happen. Mm-hmm. So sometime in 2014, I changed psychiatrist, mm-hmm. and they took me off one of the meds, or tapered off one of them. I can't even remember which one it was, but no. I think it was. And my memory is very fragmented at this time, but I'm told I became able to watch TV and know what was happening in a program, speak to somebody. And apparently in that time, I'd been really interested in non-duality before, like people that spoke about non-duality, Eckhart Tolle. And there was I said, apparently, I don't remember, I said to my partner, I really want to hear that again. I really need to hear that again. Wow. And we found somebody doing satsang online, a teacher that I'd seen before from America, Pamela Wilson. Mm-hmm. And I started listening to her every Sunday, and there was something in that. There was something big in that about what you're feeling. You should listen to it. Mm-hmm. And it was about, she'd say things like, oh, if you're angry, there's no point in telling the anger to go away. It's already come in, sat on the sofa and got a cup of tea. You might as well sit and listen to what it has to say. Mm-hmm. So I started listening to her, and I can remember speaking to her like it was a public satsang, but anyone can answer a question. I'd say, but the doctors say, and she'd say, well, what are the emotions saying? What's it saying to you? Why are they there? And she also did quite a big thing about thanking them as well. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being here, fear. Thank you for what do you have to say to me? So that was one thing. Mm. I see it as so much more. Like I look back now, and it was completely holistic healing, because about December 2014, I really hurt my back, and I got referred to a physiotherapist. And she was like, oh, wow, you can't get out of the chair. We have to get you to get out of the chair. That's a terrible thing. You can't get out of the chair. Wow. And so I started doing physio exercises every single day. Mm. And then my mom paid for me to have some bowing technique. Mm-hmm. And the bowing person was like, of course you can walk down the hill. Of course you can walk. Let's help you walk. Yeah. Wow. So I had physio, I had bowing, and I really think those two were game changers. And then in about March 2015, they told me that the authorities, whatever, medical profession, told me that they'd done everything they could. They couldn't give me any more therapy, so they were just going to leave me on the tablets and off you go.
So had you been having some talking therapies up to that?
I had, but basically I was too drugged to benefit from them. And then my therapist had been off for 6 months. She'd been in a car accident, and so they'd waited for her to come back, and then they decided that I should no longer have therapy because it wasn't working and they hadn't got the resources. And so I was, leading up to that decision, I was absolutely devastated. I was ringing the crisis line every night with the tablets lined up in front of me to kill myself. Like every night I'd be, help me, I'm going to kill myself, please. Or some Samaritans, crisis line, anybody, just ringing in the middle of the night, bleeding and pleading for help. And what can they say to you? I mean, one of the social workers just said, oh, calm down, make yourself some toast and a cup of tea. Maybe that was good advice, but at the time it felt like I was wild, like wildly out of control, wildly begging for help. And then we got a letter with a decision saying, well, we're not going to give you therapy anymore. You're just on these tablets forever and that's it. And there was just this moment where I knew I either had to kill myself or get better. And I don't recommend this to anybody else, but that was my pivotal moment. But I have to say, in the background, there was physical movement, there was the spirituality.
Mm-hmm.
I perhaps didn't realize this till years later. That had been in the background for 4 months before I made this decision. It had been coming to this crisis head point.
Mm-hmm.
But the background, my body had begun to move, my spirit had begun to move.
Yeah.
So I made the choice then and there to take myself off the tablets without any reference to them, which I don't recommend to anybody. Don't recommend to anybody.
Yeah.
And the other thing was we were completely broke because we were living off like disability living allowance.
Yeah.
And my partner, a credit card came up on Amazon, and he said, we're going to use that credit card to pay for a therapist outside of the NHS. And that's what we did. So this is now, we're getting to kind of May 2015. I've got therapist outside the NHS. I've got Bowen. I've got physio. I've got the spirituality. Mm-hmm. And it's all just beginning to make a huge difference. Mm-hmm. And I think it was August 2015, I walked half a mile for the first time. Had to sit down. But yeah. And then the other big change I made was I had been eating absolutely appallingly when I was ill.
Right.
I would only eat like croissants and scones and toast. And I'd wanted to, I was vegetarian. I'd been vegetarian since I was in my 20s. I wanted to be vegan. Mm-hmm. So I decided that I would become vegan. But as I was reading about recipes and stuff, mm-hmm. got really interested in the health aspect of it. Mm-hmm. So I didn't just become a vegan, I became like a whole food plant-based vegan.
Yeah.
So my food completely changed. I cut out, at the time I cut out biscuits and cakes. I allowed myself chocolate, like dark chocolate. Mm-hmm. But that was another thing. So in that time then, stopping the meds, lost some weight, and then doing the plant-based diet took the rest off. Yeah. And I lost 9 stone in that 9 months.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So it just all came together. And I always kind of credited it to, like, I made the decision. I did make the decision. But when I look back, I took care of my body. I started eating well. I started moving. I had support. The Bowen therapist was an amazing support. You know, she was lovely. You know, I had the psychologist I only actually saw 4 times. I didn't need to anymore.
Wow.
Because she just said to me, well, no wonder you feel that way. I was like, oh yeah. And I carried on listening to Pam. And the other thing that I did is I started going to gong baths, which I'd always wanted to do. So I had sound therapy. So it's just like you look back and it was every aspect of my being. I accidentally and innocently took care of.
Yeah. And it's so cool hearing your story because it just points me back to this fact that, you know, that what I share in my work is the understanding of the 3 principles. And that the whole one of those principles is mind. It's this idea that there's a you know, an invisible energy, I suppose, that guides everything in life. So whether that's, you know, the birds migrating at the right time, the leaves falling off the trees and regrowing at the right time, you know, all of that, that we're part of that too, and that there's this unknown, invisible force that is always guiding us. Whether we know about it or not is irrelevant because it's there. And just hearing your story, it's like, all those things just came together at the perfect time, at
Yeah.
the point when you had reached that
Yeah,
that,
that
that
end
point.
point.
Yeah, that it's this or it's that. And I think I don't know whether you're familiar with Eckhart Tolle, but he talks of that same kind of point of having the realization that I can't live with myself anymore.
No.
And in that thought, I can't live with myself, he realized that there was kind of two things going on. There was the kind of I and myself. There was
The
something
watcher.
other than what he
Yeah.
thought he was.
Yeah.
And it's just such a gorgeous, example of how we may feel completely trapped in a situation, but whatever it was that moved that psychiatrist to remove that medication for you, that
Yeah.
then freed up some energy that allowed you to then go back to listening to non-duality teachings, that then allowed, and it's like, we can't direct any of that. We can't know when or how or if that's going to happen, but just having some inkling that there's something other than us that's in control.
Because of course, when the psychiatrist was doing these things, I was absolutely kicking and screaming.
Yeah.
Because I was petrified and scared, and I was afraid that all the symptoms would come back.
Yeah.
Because it was scary. It wasn't just, I don't mean to be disparaging to anybody that feels it, but I wasn't just depressed or anxious. Like there was, the mirror was going to suck me in and I was going to be pulled into the dimension and die, and there was somebody waiting outside the door to kill me. And, it was petrifying by the world that somehow my mind had created. Was a very, very, very scary one.
Yeah.
An intensely scary one. So I was really kicking and screaming. It was only when they were just came to the end of what they could offer. But the other thing that just occurs to me was a couple of months later, maybe the July, I was like making the bed and I felt a bit anxious. I felt unhappy. And I think in the past I'd just gone, oh no, here I go again. Here it's happening again. Oh no, it's out of my control. And I just thought, everybody feels a bit anxious sometimes.
Wow.
Everybody feels depressed sometimes, and it will pass. And that was it. It was not being sucked in to that pattern that I had established for myself over decades.
Yeah.
That when that happens, that means we're going there.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm really intrigued by that. What was it? How did you know that? I mean, like,
I don't know. I don't know. It was just a realization. Also, I didn't have the best childhood like most people. I could pick things. I could pick out trauma that led to why this was happening. But something in me, I think, probably from listening to non-duality, was that the people that had caused my trauma were just getting out of trauma. So there was that kind of realization as well, is that I didn't have to be scared of them anymore or their effect on me. I could let go. So there was a lot of letting go as well of the past. And the past does this, the past has this effect on me. I mean, I've only just started to read about 3 principles because the course we're doing, don't know much, but one of the revelations in that was, it's not happening now.
Yeah.
And I think I kind of got that then. I didn't have those words for it or that thought, but it was kind of, and also that it would pass. Like the strong emotion, however strong they are, there's a kind of thing, isn't there? Like, the strongest emotion is, whether that's joy or pain, your body kind of can't hold it.
Yeah.
For long. It will pass.
Yeah, and that is an amazing thing to see, isn't it? And it's something that I share when I'm working with kids, because when I talk about well-being with children, I kind of divide it into these 5 powers that we have, that we're born with, and one of those is calm. It's this
Mm.
exactly that idea that you cannot ever stay in a strong emotion. We never stay there. We don't have to do anything to get out of it. We
No.
just reset to calm. We come back there. It's like we can
Yeah.
go right up and right down,
Yeah.
but at some point we bob back to the surface. It's like you try and push a cork under the water. It can't stay there unless you keep pushing it. When you let go, it bobs back to the surface. It's that resilience that's built within us, that we're born with, that we forget.
And I'm lucky I live in a, developed country, and I have water and food and all those things. But the other thing that in this situation of living in a developed country and water and food is that I realized that most of the time we're okay. Like, that was the other thing that was really clear to me, was that even the sense of nothing really, like, you're not happy, you're not sad. Like, if you think of in a 24-hour period, you might notice the times when you're really happy, or might notice the times you're really sad, but say there for an hour, like for most of us, the rest of the 20 hours, we're all right, we're just okay, or we're not even thinking about it.
Yeah, we don't even notice.
No. So the vast majority of the time, we're okay. So that was another thing that kind of, I think I heard one of the non-duality teachers say that. I was like, oh gosh, yes. That was Catherine Ingram. I was like, yes. Yeah, I'm okay most of the time. I'm concentrating on the time. I'm clinging to the time I feel good, and pushing away the time I feel bad, or even more like scared that the time I feel bad is going to completely and get engulf and obscure everything, which it did.
Yeah.
For a long time.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's like, even in the times when you feel good, you're worrying about the bad coming back. So actually your whole experience is of the bad.
Focused on it, yeah.
Because you can't think of anything else. It's like, even if it isn't your experience in that moment, you're creating the potential for it to be in the future with the fear and the thinking.
Yeah.
But for you to see, like, I love the fact that, we don't need to understand the three principles. We need to never have even come across them. We, have no experience whatsoever. And yet, what your story is so beautifully illustrating is that they're principles of life, principles behind how our experience is created. And whether you know of their existence or not, it's the same for all of us.
Yeah, because that's why they're a principle, isn't it? Because it is an actual fundamental principle of life. It's not a sort of philosophy.
Yeah, or an exception
life.
In this. There are no exceptions. And I just think what's so gorgeous is that you've only just been introduced to that experience. And for me, when I heard about the three principles, what it did was put an explanation to what I had already known. Most, it was kind of like you describe, you sort of you knew this stuff innately, but you didn't have any words for it. You didn't have a framework for it. And I think what's so helpful for me is to see, oh, that's why I did that, or oh, right, so I could trust myself. I have got this wisdom within me that I kind of dismissed because I thought that my head was telling me more important things, and just for me it was such a relief to kind of have an explanation, I guess, to my suffering. That it wasn't, for me, it wasn't the outside. I couldn't understand why I was unhappy, because everything in my life there was nothing to be unhappy about. I had everything. If you looked into my life, you would think, well, there's no way she could be unhappy.
Yeah.
And then I realized that it was because I was creating it through my thinking. I was living in a fearful, scary place because that's what I was churning over in my head.
And the thing in the three principles that struck me when I read about them now is that the last time I went to see my therapist, my private therapist that we pay for with a credit card, was that she was doing an EMDR treatment on me, and we were uncovering a new trauma. Like, we were uncovering yet another thing that had happened.
Yeah.
We were halfway through the protocol when it was time to go. And I came home and I said to my partner, I just don't want to dig at the past anymore. I'm just going to find more and more and more. I just want to concentrate on now. And because when I came off the tablet, started to move, I was joy filled to be alive. I mean, that's past, but I was, for about a year, I was like, folding the clothes and cooking the food for my family was like the most delicious thing I could do, you know. But that realization that I could dig forever and keep finding more and more. And I wrote to her and said, I'm not coming back. Thank you very much, but I need to concentrate on now, not the past. And she was like, but you're in the middle of a protocol. And I was like, it's okay. So that's the 3 principles tells me that now, but that was, again, it was something that just seemed obvious in the moment. How, you know, you will find something forever. You'll keep finding the stuff.
Yeah.
If you look for it.
And I love that. It's like, because the only way that we can experience all of that stuff is to bring it back into our thoughts.
Yeah.
And as soon as we think all of that stuff, as soon as we go back there, we have all of the experience.
Well, you feel it in your body, yeah.
So there comes a time, I guess, when that doesn't make sense. And for you came to that conclusion, that you had that insight that it doesn't make sense to go back there. For many people, it will make sense. You know, we're not dismissing the idea of having therapy and going back to your past. That's not, you know, what I would want to get people to do at all. But
I agree.
But there comes a time that you may or may not see that that's helpful to you.
I mean, I'd had therapy on and off for like 30 years by then. But, and the one thing I do want to say about therapy is I think most people, in my opinion, most people need to be heard. So that, like, therapy is fabulous, but most people are not heard in that way. It doesn't happen in everyday conversations very often. I mean, it can.
Yeah.
And most people have to tell their stories first, their story heard. And that is why a counsellor or a therapist or a coach is absolutely invaluable. You know, I'm sure that there are people that can spontaneously realise these things, and I think it is possible. I would say for most of us who live in this culture, this society, this world, you know, we have to be heard, and there's something in the being heard that is so healing. And being told that it's okay that you feel that way. The allowing.
And you talked about the, you know, what you heard from the spiritual teachings about, you know, allowing the emotions. Like so much of our energy is spent in trying to push away thoughts and feelings that are uncomfortable, that we don't want to have. And I don't know about you, but certainly in my experience, the less I do that, the more I allow them. Like you say, they're already kind of trying to come in. So just the more we allow it, the more quickly it can pass. It's like it almost needs the space.
I mean, that's very simple, isn't it? That, you know, you just hear it all the time, but what you resist persists. That is just so, like, that is fundamental. To me, it's like a fundamental truth, and just letting it in, because it's already in. You think it's not in. Oh, this emotion, I'm not going to feel it. It's not in me. Sorry, if you're doing that, you're already trying to heave it out the door.
And then we're focused on it. Then our attention's on it. It's like, then that's it's going to be there. Even if we're wanting to push it away, we're effectively putting energy into it. As you say, when you allow it in, it's like you kind of almost surrender to it. It can pass through.
I did go through a long time of, oh, what are you here for? What do you want to tell me? Because that was the protocol I'd been taught, and I think it was valuable. I wouldn't possibly even do that now. Now I just let it in and sit with it and let it through. And sometimes it will tell me something and sometimes it won't. But I think that was also, for me, that was a danger. Like, oh, this anger comes from when I was 3 and this happened, you know. So and every time something would come in, I'd want to be chasing down the origin of
Yeah.
it, and you know, so that was kind of something my mind did that was perhaps a little bit counterproductive. But overall, even starting that way, I think it was a really good place to start. Oh, this anger's here. Why is it here? Or this fear is here. Why? Oh, this fear is from when you were 3, and this happened. Well, of course,
Yeah.
you know, and
Yeah.
of course, the other thing I kind of realised that I kind of just coming to my mind to say, I don't know how relevant it is seeing that once you have this self-identity, so for me, identity of victim, and all the decisions I made were from the decision of victim. So they weren't very good decisions.
Yeah.
So the life decisions I made from this identity I'd created for myself were not good decisions, were not healthy decisions. And so the whole of life then folded into that identity I created for myself. So that was really interesting as well. That was a realization. Oh my gosh, like literally relationship decisions, work decisions, parenting decisions made from fear.
Yeah.
And wow, that was a biggie.
That's a huge thing to see, isn't it?
Mm.
It's like we create and we wear a pair of glasses, you know, whatever you called them, victim.
Filter. Yeah.
Yeah.
What I called I think it was an identity I invented for myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
And we all do that.
best way I could describe it.
Yeah. And we all do that to a certain extent. And as you say, when we have that filter, that's how we see all of life. That there is kind of, you know, if you've got your, I talk about it with kids, you know, if you've got your kind of low mood glasses on, and everything looks rubbish, like the entire day is rubbish. And if you don't know that those glasses can change on their own, spontaneously, then it's just a complete misunderstanding. You get caught in that idea that that's how life is.
And I love the way, I love that the B principle say it's an innocent misunderstanding, because that feels so true. Because like obviously the decisions I made, even on going down the route of taking all the meds, it really affected my family, really affected my children, and I carried so much guilt for that, so much guilt, and like that nearly drove me down again. But I think realizing it's completely innocently done. So even the choosing the victim, well, you know, you don't think you choose it. You don't see that you choose it until you see. But like I think it's really important to say to people that any situation you find yourself in, any thought you have, is innocently done. You know, fallen into it, you're doing the best you can with the thoughts that you have.
100%. And the more we see that, the more we have compassion for others as well. Like they're just doing the best they can given where their thinking is. If they think that they're, I don't know, that they're really useless, then their behavior is going to come from that place. It's never on purpose. It's just a misunderstanding.
No, it's never on purpose. That is so freeing, because I think a lot of people that are unwell in many different ways will be feeling guilt about how it affects other people and the impact. I think to know that it's innocent is huge, and to act, and then to the relationships that have been, like my relationships with my children are very different than they would have been if I'd have been well, you know. But there's almost like no point in thinking that, because that's another thing, that's just another thought, like, oh, if only, you know. It's like, how is it now? How can I be the best mom now? How can I be, you know, the best that I can be with them now?
Wow. I mean, there's so much power in that, because there's so much talk of forgiveness and, you know, all of that kind of being a thing you need to do
forgive yourself.
Yeah, but
That's
actually,
the thing.
if you can just see that in this moment, like, by you saying, well, how can I be with my children now in this moment?
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
all that exists. It doesn't, we don't need to go back to, oh, I could have done this, or I should have done that,
Mm,
or I need to forgive myself because if we can live more in the moment, which is the only thing that exists,
yeah,
there's no need for guilt. There's no need for
yeah,
going back and forgiving ourselves. We did the best we could in that moment. And now is now, and it's a different moment. So how can I move from this moment forward?
yeah. And that is interesting because again, this it's not from the three Ps, although they've confirmed it for me. Like I said, when you read about them for about 2 months, that it's innocent. I already knew that it kind of wasn't my fault. I'd already come to that for my own conclusion. But then looking back in the 5 years since my recovery, my relationship with my adult children had all been from the place of fault. So even though I was well, I'd been acting with them from a place of guilt,
Yeah.
constantly tampering down, keep it all down and make sure everything's all right because you caused so much damage and it's all your fault.
Mm.
And to like be in the now, knowing first of all knowing that was innocent,
Yeah.
and then being the best mum I can be now. That's the thing that brings you back into center. It's for me. It's knowing both of those things, and now when I relate to them and speak to them, it's from a completely different place.
So beautiful. Wow. What an I just think it's such an inspiring story, and overall, just the thread throughout it all is this idea that that we are being guided, that there is this invisible force that is there if we can only turn towards it,
Yeah,
and listen to it, and open up enough, take a step away enough from the noise in our heads to see that we have this inner guidance, this inner guide that's always got our backs.
it felt to me even more than that, like it was given to me. Like I would not have gone to the Bowen practitioner if I hadn't hurt my back, and that she made a massive difference in not only the treatment, which woke my body up, but her presence and her experience was profound. So it doesn't have to be like the psychologist, it could be anyone.
Yeah, and what's amazing in that is that I think what I really want to pick out of that is, you could have seen that problem with your back as being another issue to deal with, another thing that was, terrible about your life. But actually looking back on it now, you can see that actually that was a gift.
Yeah, it was.
It allowed you to then explore the possibility of the Bowen technique.
Yeah.
Like without that.
Yeah, that wouldn't have happened. I wouldn't have gone there, and then I wouldn't have gone there. But that was why it was almost that for me, I made a decision, and I still come back to that. And the decision had things in the background, but it was still me going, this is it now. And because I was so overweight and so unfit and could barely walk, like just walking that half mile, it took months to build up to that.
Yeah.
And you had to do the physio exercises every day, and you had like there was a determination in it.
Yeah.
There was a commitment.
Yeah.
I made a commitment to take the wellness journey. So not sure where that fits in, but like it was.
It just seems like we have will, we have power. We're not powerless.
No.
We can become over. It seems like we can become overwhelmed by the noise in our heads, by our thinking and our beliefs and everything else. But ultimately, we do have the power to move outside of our situation, to see that there could be something different.
Yeah. That's why I've become really interested in the holistic healer, because it does take into account the body was ended up being so important, such an important part of it.
Yeah.
And the wisdom of the body.
So. Beautiful. Well, that seems like a good place to end, and I'm just so grateful that you've come and shared your stories.
Thank you. I just really wanted, I know quite a few, my niece has been diagnosed with all the same things I was diagnosed with, borderline personality disorder, and this is it. She thinks it's for life, and they're just increasing her meds and increasing her meds. And she's not in a place where she can hear me. I just would really like to put this out. If anybody's in the place that can hear any of this, that will help them find their way to recovery, that would be amazing.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. And if people want to find out more about you, you said that you had a website. How can people contact you? And
I do. It's a bit of a weird one. It's Anthusai, which is ANTHOUSAI.co.uk. That actually is a Greek word for flower spirit. So that was why it's like a Greek mythology. So Anthusai.co.uk.
Wow. Well, I will put the link in the show notes and in the comments section, so people can click on that and find out more about you and contact you if they'd like to.
Thank you very much, Vicky.
Oh, thank you.
It's been lovely to speak. Thank you so much.
I will see you very soon.
Yeah, thank you. Bye bye.